NCAA basketball expansion, football, week 0, and somebody's not feeling the love. Will Ogenin, Jim Quist. This is ACC Nation. Thanks for letting us join you. Be sure to join us on multiple social media platforms. Come to us at accnation.net. You'll find more about how to connect with us on social media. We're on TikTok, where Will has all kinds of stuff that he's posting on a regular basis, talking about how things are going in the ACC and the NCAA. And, of course, he is also expressing his opinions about things that are going on in college sports in general, which is always an interesting take. Make sure that you follow him on TikTok. All right, well, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Let's talk about this NCAA basketball expansion. The tournament isn't big enough, apparently, for some people. And for some people, dare we say, greedy people?
I think that's a good way to say it, Jim. By the way, good to see you again. I know it's been a few weeks, but yeah, it's all out of greed. Like nobody like there are very few people that really want tournament expansion. Like the only people that do are the mainstays of like Greg Sankey and the Big Ten commissioner Tony Petit or whatever, the people who want more of their teams in the tournament, the mediocre ones, like the Auburn team that would finish one game above 500 and just barely missed the tournament, and in a 76 team format like this would be comfortably in. Like, and I saw this a while back. I want to say it was Kevin Sweeney of Sports Illustrated who posted who would have been like the teams in like in the 76 team format, and it was like Cal and Virginia Tech among ACC teams. I'm like, if you're a fan of those teams, yeah, you're happy your team got in, but after some of the performances those teams have put up this year, are you really thinking you're going to compete with Michigan, or even if they got that, or if they got to Duke or something? They would have. We saw those games are in the season, and they weren't that much of a game. So, but this is the new thing. We want more. And as long as there's money to be made, there will always be a clamoring for more. And I think at some point, I don't know when that's going to be, but there's going to be clamoring for a 96 team tournament at some point. I know once upon a time, sometime in the last few years, that was a talking point, was expanding to 96. Again, no fan who is passionate about college basketball really, really wants this. I it's just like you said, it's all out of greed and wanting more money.
Good way to ruin the sport. That's my take. They're already pushing on so many levels in college sports already. The greed factor has come into play, and I think most people look at it from the perspective that it is ruining games, sports. It just is out of hand. There has to be a line drawn in the sand someplace. Where do you stop? And at some point, um, I get why schools want the money. I get why the broadcasters want the money. I get why the NCAA wants the money. Why college football playoff committee wants the money. On down the line. I get all that, but you are tainting your product, and you know the bad thing about doing that to sports is that, I mean, some people can see it coming a mile off, and some people can't. Most people can't see it coming. But you'll wake up one day and it'll be like where did all the fans go? Where did the excitement go? What happened to the game? Why is nobody tuning in anymore? Why is nobody showing up at the stadiums? And you sit there scratching your head. And I can name a couple of sports that encountered that and are living it right now, as a matter of fact. And it's not going to be a pretty picture. It's going to be a struggle, and you can't reverse that. You have got to say that's enough. That's enough. That's it right there, man. And as you point out, Will, you got teams that, quite frankly, should not be in postseason play because they're just going to pick up a paycheck, and okay, that's the greed factor. But what are they contributing to the overall picture? I really don't see anything. I mean, okay, if I don't want to pick on Cal and Virginia Tech here, but they're ACC teams, so I'm going to use them as examples. Let's say that both of those teams had gotten into the tournament. Now, odds are they would have been one and dones. Okay. Now, I understand the money part for both of those schools. I understand the exposure part because it is a recruiting tool. But if you get hammered by some no-name team in that first game, it will stay with you for a lifetime. And then all of that positivity that might have come from a good run, if you're a decent team in the NCAA tournament or in college football playoffs, you wasted it. And it's going to take, it's going to take a long time to get any of it back if you shoot your shot and you miss, and especially if you know going in that you shouldn't be there.
While you're talking here, I was trying to find that story I was talking about from Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated, and I'm looking at it right here.
Mm-hmm.
Just some of the teams that were in the that would have been in the play-in game this season. I mean, I talked about Auburn, who finished barely above 500, and San Diego State, Indiana, which was good for a little while, but then fell off at a cliff at the end of the season. They were 18-14.
Right.
They would have been in a hypothetical tournament, even though they lost 6 of the last 7 to finish the season. Like I said, Virginia Tech would have been in it, and we saw how they were coming down the stretch towards the end of the season. And Cal, obviously, they would have been in it, but then again, they also fell off a cliff at the end of the season. So it's these teams that these teams are going to get put in one of the greatest things in all of sports, and like I said, nobody wants it.
Yeah. Just people who want more money. And that's, I think that's the thing that is that disturbs me. And one of the fields that I used to be in as a professional, one of the things they taught us that greed is, it was our responsibility to keep certain parts of that in check. And the reason is that the instructors always just hammered this into our heads, is that when greed gets out of hand, then it becomes ruinous. And if somebody's there not checking on this all the time, it will destroy a system. Now, I have seen that happen in that field. I'm seeing it happen in this field, and I've seen it happen in a couple of other fields, and I'm really worried about where college sports is headed overall, and it strikes me that we're getting to a point where what we used to know, and hey, look, I'm for progress. I'm a very progressive guy when it comes down to nuts and bolts, but there is a point at which you have to have checks and balances, and if you don't have that, everything gets out of hand, and it's a slippery slope. And once you start sliding down that hill, man, there really is no recovery. There isn't. There's nobody is going to be able to put their hand out and grab you and stop you, and without damaging themselves, or they get sucked into it and pulled down the hill with you into whatever the hell is waiting there at the bottom. And
Yeah, and one last thing, because we probably should move on a little bit, but one of the things that stands out to me as I'm looking at this bracket, Wisconsin obviously lost in the first round to High Point in the NCAA tournament, and what was a really, really fun game.
mm-hmm.
In this new scenario, they would have likely faced the play-in winner of Oklahoma State and Virginia Tech. Would you rather seen Wisconsin play High Point or Virginia Tech? Even if Virginia Tech somehow beat Oklahoma State and then beat Wisconsin, the upset doesn't hit the same way, because High Point's in the Big South, and I know High Point has a really generous NIL for their level, but the upsets just wouldn't hit the same.
Yeah, no, it would not. Let's move on.
Yes.
Let's talk about Week 0 football. Gee whiz, guys. Everybody's saying that's a long way until football. Well, we've just gotten past the draft here a couple of weeks ago, so it's really not that far. In fact, some of our buddies in the ACC media have already started doing their reviews of what's to come football-wise. I know that Jeff and Matthew have, in fact, they talked to you first about Virginia football. And I know they've done a couple others as well, a couple other teams. So they're kind of jumping on it early. They usually do. We wait a little while to let the dust settle from spring and some of the transfer action that goes on, and then we'll start jumping on it here in I don't know, a couple weeks. It's not that far off actually. Because we are in May, and usually we start in June. So here's a really interesting game. The ACC under John Swofford had initiated this ACC International, which I always kind of, was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, to be honest, Will. For me, I mean, I was like, what are you looking at here? As much as people don't like John Swofford, whoever came up with this ACC International concept, whether you like this or not, it's visionary, because if you look around at the NFL, how that's expanding, how it's very popular overseas, outside of the United States. And this is where the ACC is stepping in and going, hey, yeah, we're game. And Week 0, we have an interesting matchup that's going to take place at the site of the CFL's Toronto Argonauts, their home stadium. And that is between...
Yeah, so we're talking. So this is actually for 2027. Syracuse and Wake Forest are going to play a game in Canada next year. It's just an interesting thing, because we talked about what you talked about. They were looking at these different things for expansion, or at least growing the game of football. This came out just a few days ago. They're going to play in Week 0 in 2027 at BMO Field in Toronto. It's it's not going to be quite the haul it will be for NC State of Virginia when they go to Brazil later this season. And I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to grow the college game in different spots. Who knows? Maybe with the way things are going to the ACC, if it still exists in a few years, we'll expand to Canada somehow. I don't know.
I'm going for Brazil.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically become the All Coast Conference. I'm sure we could do. They could be like the Atlantic Coast Conference in Brazil,
How about the Americas?
America's Coast Conference.
Yeah.
I see
And
what you're
and
doing there. We could. I mean, we can might as well expand into Mexico at this point. I'm sure we. I mean, the Estadio Azteca. I think they play some NFL games there.
they love their football down there.
Yeah,
American
they love their football and football.
in football, yes. I'm looking forward to the ACC after hours that we'll be doing in Brazil.
Yep.
We may not be coming back.
Yep. I mean, it's we would get in and we can talk about it real quick, but obviously the game time was set today on Tuesday as we record for that game. It's going to be a 3:30 Eastern kickoff for NC State and Virginia down in Brazil, and um, I think the one person who's probably most excited for this is friend of the show Jackie Franciulli, because she does have that Brazilian background with her family, and it was funny to listen to the good old podcast here recently and hear her talk about all these Brazilian delicacies. And like, I mean, I am not the most adventurous eater in the world. I'm far from it, as you well know, Jim. But it's just interesting. I want to like I'm kind of curious to see what the players think about the food there.
That's, some good food.
I'm sure it is.
Good food. You have to open up your mind though, because it's just like when we spoke with Isabella Gustinelli about the guys going over to Italy and playing basketball and being introduced to uh, different foods, and she talked to us uh, about Italian pizza is not what you would think it is, and it's very different. So that when some of these guys would come in and go, well, it's safe, I'll order a pizza. You might want to look very closely at some of the ingredients on there before you do that, because it's not going to be exactly the same as what you get in the U.S. So,
Right.
but yeah, I love that about Jackie had shared some of the different foodstuffs that on our show quite a while back. I think probably about 2 years ago we talked about food and stuff with her, and that's an interesting background. I'm wide open, and so I encourage you to Will to keep the palate open. So, all right, let's talk about a little bit of love here, or who is not feeling the love in the ACC. Now, who might that be?
So you must be referring to the quotes from the ACC thing down at Amelia Island. Um, Notre Dame came out and said, yeah, their relationship with the ACC is strong, is as strong as it can be, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a story by Brett McMurphy of On Three, basically comparing to, or what somebody said, says Notre Dame is the guy that walks in the house, opens the fridge, eats all the food, then bleeps the wife, kicks the dog, doesn't pay the mortgage, and walks out without any skin in the game. And he says in the story that there is a large contingent at ACC schools that resent them. Said in December that was magnified when the Irish became the first 10-win team to opt out of a bowl game after Notre Dame didn't receive a playoff bid. At this week's ACC spring meetings in Amelia Island, it was called pathetic, 100% arrogance, and crybabies. Those were just a few of the responses from the league's athletic directors and coaches that spoke with On Three about Notre Dame. There is another quote that says, there's a very widespread perception that we're all getting used, an ACC athletic director told On Three, and we're sick of it. if an ACC team did that, it would have been fine. It would have been fine. It's a bad situation creating bad outcomes for organizations that need each other. And quite frankly, I think this thing with ACC with Notre Dame kind of being a partial member has kind of run its course. I think they did it originally because they were worried that if back when they did it, they were probably worried about being left out of the playoff because of being an independent, but they have their guardrails in place now going forward where I think if they finish in the top 12 in the CFP rankings, they're guaranteed a bid. And who knows, and this is something we hadn't talked about yet, there's a likelihood the college football playoffs expanding to 24 teams. Again, nobody really wants it, but does that mean they're essentially just going to be locked into the thing every year now? Because as long as Marcus Freeman is coaching them, they're going to be in good shape for that. Um, but yeah, it's just interesting all the hatred that's kind of being spewed in their direction. I understand it because they and I understand the being used part definitely. I just feel like these are I mean the only good out of it, like especially for football, is it helps fill stadiums when Notre Dame's coming to your town. I mean, like if Notre Dame's coming to Charlottesville, that thing's probably the Scott Stadium's probably getting 50,000. You're probably not getting 50,000 for any other game outside of the Virginia Tech game. This year, I don't even think they got the 50,000 because Tech was so bad. But you know, there. I mean, it's there. There's the good in that, but it's mostly, for the most part, I think it has definitely run its course. And when it comes up, I wonder if they move off of it.
Mm. That's an interesting premise, and I love that description at the front end of this. Oh, it's just so spot on. I mean, my God. Um, the one thing that I wholeheartedly agree with here is that you know the fact that Notre Dame did not play postseason, did not take their bowl bid. Um, it's not just Notre Dame in this particular instance. You know, it is something that did damage to the ACC. Now, can I see where people would be offended by that and upset by it? Yeah. I mean, we're talking about nickel and dime every day here with most athletic programs, and then you have somebody arrogantly doing that nonsense. Um, so I don't have any feels for the people who made that decision on the part of Notre Dame. Um, the other side of the coin is that Notre Dame, what they do to contribute from the standpoint of other sports and their competitiveness there. Um, they've dropped off in men's basketball. I mean, I don't even know where they've gone. Women's basketball is finally starting to come back. They're good at fencing. They win fencing. They didn't do anything this year in baseball for the most part, and you're starting to look at a situation here where okay, uh, really they're only so, and people who are Notre Dame fans are going to go, well, that's because we're in the ACC. No, it's not because you're in the ACC. It's just because overall, when it comes to anything other than football, which is your golden calf in South Bend, um, you're just not there. And, I don't mean to offend somebody that I knew when I was growing up, Kevin Corrigan, who's a men's lacrosse coach. But, I mean, come on, dude. You know, if that's the only program that's really succeeding or doing well, along with fencing, um, what's going on up there? And I can see why people, other coaches, other ADs, may be looking at this, and they've had, plenty of time to really get a feel for, working with Notre Dame coaches and staff, and getting a feel for, you know, what's the give and take. And I can tell you, for years and years and years, you and I know this, for a lot of reasons why people react to stuff that we used to do, and now I've just totally excluded them from the power polls altogether, in part because of this trend. People in the ACC, fans in the ACC, the folks that are non-Notre Dame, have always questioned, how is this beneficial to us? What's this doing for us? And I always kind of looked at it as, you got to look at the bigger picture. Yeah, look at the bigger picture. Well, I've been standing back, and the problem here, Will, is I've had to just totally step away from it altogether. And the more I do that and look at it, it's sort of like I'm beginning to see what these folks are saying. I hate to say that, because there's a lot of things about Notre Dame I like, but you know, what are you doing for us?
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to sit here and knock on Notre Dame too much.
Why not?
They're an elite. They're one of the best football programs out there. They've been
Okay,
consistent at that.
sure.
But you're not really you're only partially helping the ACC. Now, you
Yes,
mentioned the basketball team has been down for a few years. Micah Shrewsbury will be on the hot seat going into this season.
should have been fired.
Women's basketball has been solid. How long are they going to be able to keep that up for? Obviously Hannah Hidalgo's been one of the better all around players in women's basketball. When she leaves, what's that going to do for them? I do have concerns about that.
Yeah,
And you said baseball's not very good this year, and all the other sports, only a certain segment of the population cares about that. That's not going to really help you bring in the dollars.
they're not revenue makers,
Exactly.
producers. That's for sure. And I hate to talk about sports from that perspective, because it kind of offends me. And I'm going, whoa, I'm sensitive. Well, yeah, I am, because I kind of like to think that all college sports is on equal footing, but we know that that's not the case, and it's getting worse. So yeah, no love for the fine folks at South Bend, and I think you may be right, Will. I think that relationship is either going to have to change in some fashion, um, or maybe they just need to move on from each other.
Yeah. But the thing of it is this agreement goes through 2037.
Mm-hmm.
It was signed in 2012 as a 25-year agreement, and we're just past the halfway point.
So, in other words, suck
Who
it up.
knows there's all this talk about the consolidation and the super leagues and all that other mumbo jumbo. Who knows how much that's going to mean, in the coming years. I
Well,
don't
and
know
let me
right
just,
now.
I'm just going to say right now, this whole Super League Super Conference, Super League, whatever the hell you want to call it, is a lot of bull hockey. I'm sorry, it's not, it won't work. It won't work. There is not enough damn money out there to fund that kind of thing. And, look, you do a super league. Let's say you do a super league. You take half of the SEC and half of the Big Ten, and you put them together, and then everybody else is left out. Does anybody in their right mind believe that this country, the fans in this country and outside the country, as we spoke of earlier, um, are all on board for that limited number of teams, and those are the only teams that they want to watch. No, no, just plain no. And I can tell you now that whatever might be, pushed aside, let's say that the Big Ten says, well, we're going to push, these guys aside. The SEC says, well, we're going to push these guys. These are our bottom feeders. And the Big 12 is sitting there and the ACC is sitting there and they go, well, I guess maybe, we ought to get back with the Pac-12 and say, let's create our own Super League. And it just feels like I'm going down the same damn path as we did in the NFL when there was the NFL and the AFL, and they eventually had to come together again in order to succeed. Because the competitiveness back and forth is just one of those things that is going to prevent one from becoming the master in that particular instance. It can't work. You cannot have one entity rising to the top and being the one and only when you've got all these other teams and all these other fans and no. And honestly, anybody sitting there listening to me right now is going, "Oh, you're full of it, man. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." Well, you are full of shit, okay? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You haven't looked at the business models. You don't have a clue as to what the hell the financial considerations are. You don't understand media. What the hell do I do all day? What is my background? Okay.
I will say we would have hit on one more thing before we call it a show, Jim. The ACC softball or the NCAA softball, and we had 8 teams selected to the tournament.
Yep.
So these games, I'll just run down the teams and when they play. Florida State is taking on Stetson. That's at noon on Friday, May 15th. That's in Tallahassee. Duke is taking on Arizona in Durham. That's a noon start on ACC Network. Georgia Tech is taking on Texas State in Gainesville, Florida on ESPN+. Virginia Tech is taking on South Alabama down in Baton Rouge. That's a 3:30 start on ESPN+. Louisville is in taking on Grand Canyon. That game is in Lincoln, Nebraska at 4 o'clock on ESPNU. Clemson is taking on UNC Greensboro. That game is in Athens, Georgia. It's a 4:30 start on ESPN+. Stanford is taking on Princeton in Stillwater, Oklahoma at 4:30 p.m. on ACC Network. And at night, Virginia is in. They are taking on Indiana in Knoxville, Tennessee, scheduled for 8 p.m. on ESPN2. A lot of consternation out there from the Virginia Tech side about not hosting a region, and I think there were some wondering about just the way Blacksburg is not the biggest city in the world. I think I saw their population is about 44,000 that's what I saw. If that's the case, the suburb of the Twin Cities that I live in has about 20,000 more people in it. So just to kind of give you an idea. But still, the Hokies had a great season, and they're definitely going to be a really successful season for ACC softball, sending 8 teams to the tournament.
I think one of the things that teams like Virginia Tech, who are kind of located out in the middle of nowhere, they're close enough to Roanoke that I think that one of the things in my area, we have a sports tourism director, and he and his team have done a fantastic job of developing multiple types of fields which appeal to anything from high school to college to you name it. I mean, they've got softball fields, lacrosse fields, everything, soccer. So they've got all these tournaments and stuff coming in here. I think, and I don't know enough about what's going on down in the Roanoke area I am going down there on Thursday, so I'm going to kind of look into it a little bit um, to see if Virginia Tech might be working hand in hand a little bit more with the Roanoke Valley, which is got I wouldn't say a huge airport, but a substantial airport, and it's a good place for teams to come into. There's plenty of hotels, plenty of restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. If you're going to have tournaments, maybe you should start working with you know Roanoke and the city of Salem, Roanoke County, and some of the other cities that are surrounding Blacksburg down there, that Montgomery County, to put together some sort of a sports program that really pushes for these NCAA events, because yeah, I mean you can host them from that standpoint and be very successful, because it's a great place to visit. If you've never been to Blacksburg, I would encourage you to go specifically during the warmer months. Winter's not exactly the kind of place you want to go. Though Will probably would go, it's shorts weather down in Virginia Tech.
No, I've heard many a story about like people going to like at the end of the season the Virginia Tech game down in Blacksburg, and the temperatures at nights are like in the 30s. It's if you're not used to the cold, it is not the most fun feeling. I mean, I I say this as as someone who's lived in Minnesota now for 20 almost 27 years. I've seen many a people out here in sub-zero weather wearing shorts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They are crazy.
Yeah, or have high blood pressure, one or the other.
I just think they're
Warm.
crazy.
Yep, well, that too. Anywho, that's all. There's a lot of sports going on. Huge number of ACC sports going on. The baseball guys are in their last week regular season, so we're going to find out who's got the seedings for the ACC baseball tournament in Charlotte, which is coming up soon. Also, there's a lot of stuff going on in the NCAA where ACC teams are active. So support your team, find out what's going on. We'll try to help with that, and we'll talk about it a little more in the future. So until next time, cheers.
School.